In the worst years of the Great Depression, more than 30 million Americans, nearly a quarter of the population, lived in real hunger. The banks had failed. The factories had closed. The jobs were gone. And yet, in city tenements and country farmhouses, in mining towns and immigrant neighborhoods, families found ways to feed themselves day after day across more than a decade of hard times. They did it on knowledge, community, grit, and 100 small skills the comfortable years that followed let slip out of memory. Here is what gets lost in the photographs of breadlines. The Depression generation was not passive. They were extraordinarily resourceful, and the ways they stretched food, money, and materials were both ingenious and effective. Number 21 could feed a family on what most households throw away. Number 9 made impossible budgets work for millions. These 25 tricks weren't lost because the Depression ended. They were lost because the people who learned them grew up and gave their children easier lives, and the easier life had no use for tricks born of desperation. Hit subscribe, because this is American history that fed a nation when nothing else would. Let us count down. Number 25. The endless soup pot. Your great-grandmother kept a soup pot going almost continuously, adding whatever scraps came through the kitchen. A bone from Sunday dinner, vegetable ends, the heel of a stale loaf, all went in, and the family ate from it for days. Number 24. Bread soup and milk toast. When the food really was thin, your great-grandmother poured hot milk or broth over torn bread to feed the children a warm meal at almost no cost. Milk toast was a Depression supper for millions when there was nothing else. Number 23. The cheap cuts and the organ meats. When the family could afford meat, it was the cheap cuts and organ meats wealthier families turned away from, and your great-grandmother knew how to cook every one. Liver and onions, kidney stew, heart slow-braised, neck bones for broth, a real cuisine built from what cost almost nothing. Number 22. Stretching the ground meat. When the family had a pound of ground beef, your great-grandmother made it feed everyone by mixing in breadcrumbs, oatmeal, or stale bread, doubling or tripling the volume. The loaves and patties held together well and stretched a small piece of meat across many more meals. Number 21. The vegetable peelings that became dinner. Your great-grandmother never threw out the potato peels, the carrot ends, or the onion skins. She used them in stocks and soups, fried them crisp as a side, or fed them to the chickens. The principle was strict. Anything edible was eaten. Number 20. Day-old bread and the bread pudding. When bread went stale, your great-grandmother turned it into bread pudding with milk and eggs, into French toast, into stuffing, or into breadcrumbs to stretch other foods. The day-old loaf was a resource, not a waste, feeding families well at very low cost. Number 19. The rented or shared garden patch. Even families without land found a garden patch, a corner of someone else's lot, a strip behind an apartment building. Your great-grandmother grew what she could wherever she could, adding vital fresh food to a thin diet. Number 18. The community canning kitchen. Many neighborhoods had community canning kitchens where families brought garden produce and the church helped put it up in jars, using equipment no single family could afford. Your great-grandmother came home with shelves full of canned food, and the social bonds were as valuable as the jars. Number 17. Hunting and fishing the local wild. With grocery money scarce, your great-grandfather hunted rabbits, squirrels, and birds, fished the rivers and lakes, and brought home meat that cost nothing but ammunition and time. The wild food was a real supplement to the family's meals. Number 16. The chicken in every backyard that allowed it. Where it was permitted, the family kept a few chickens, fed on scraps, and left to forage, and your great-grandmother gathered eggs every morning. The chickens produced from waste, and those backyard eggs fed millions of children through the lean years. Number 15. Foraging the parks, fields, and roadsides. The wild greens, berries, nuts, and mushrooms in public parks and along roadsides were free food, and your great-grandmother gathered dandelions, lamb's quarters, wild onions, blackberries, and walnuts at no cost. The knowledge of what to gather and when was a resource the Depression made very valuable. Number 14. The day's catch traded with the neighbors. Within tight neighborhoods, families traded what they had: eggs for tomatoes, deer meat for fresh bread. Your great-grandmother knew everyone on the street and what they had, and the constant trading made every family's resources stretch further. Number 13. The flour sack and feed sack wardrobe. When companies discovered women were sewing clothing from their cotton sacks, they began printing the sacks in pretty patterns to compete for the seamstress market. Your great-grandmother sewed dresses, shirts, and linens from them, and the family's wardrobe came largely from the packaging of their staple foods. Number 12. Mending and remaking until nothing was left. There was no money for new clothes, so your great-grandmother mended every garment until it could no longer be mended, then turned the cloth into quilts, then rags, then stuffing. A coat passed down through 4 children, trousers more patched than original. Keeping the family clothed was a quiet daily achievement. Number 11. The relief programs and the soup kitchens. The federal relief programs of the New Deal and the soup kitchens run by churches were lifelines, and your great-grandparents used them without shame, knowing they would help others in turn when better times came. Accessing help with dignity was part of getting through. Number 10. The home boarding house and the rented room. Many families took in boarders or rented rooms for cash, and your great-grandmother fed them, cleaned their rooms, and ran the small business of a respectable house. The income kept the mortgage paid or the rent current, and it lifted many families through the worst of it. Number 9. The Sunday gathering and the shared meal. Family and community gathered on Sundays, and your great-grandmother prepared the one good meal of the week, pooling resources with extended family, so everyone ate well at least once. The Sunday dinner was a meal and a morale event, dignity and connection on a tight budget. Number 8. Coffee stretched with chicory and grain. Coffee was a luxury, and your great-grandmother stretched it with roasted chicory, ground barley, or other substitutes, turning a small amount of real coffee into a much larger pot. It tasted different, but carried the family through the mornings on a tiny budget. Number 7. Soap from scraps and careful hygiene. Your great-grandmother made soap from saved fat and lye leached from wood ashes, or bought one cake and made it last a month. The family washed carefully but sparingly, and good hygiene kept everyone healthy on a budget that allowed no medical care. Number 6. Heating the house with whatever burned. With coal expensive and money tight, your great-grandfather heated the house with whatever could be found: scrap wood, newspapers rolled tight, broken furniture, scraps of crating. Getting heat from poor fuel carried many families through the hardest winters. Number 5. The Depression cookbook and the swapped recipes. Newspapers, magazines, and church groups published recipes designed to feed families well on almost nothing, and your great-grandmother collected, shared, and traded them. The kitchen cookbook was full of clippings and handwritten notes from years of experimentation. Number 4. The patched-together luxury. Even in the hardest times, your great-grandparents found small luxuries: a slice of cake on a birthday, a piece of fruit for Christmas, a homemade toy. The small luxuries were not luxuries at all. They were evidence that the hard times would not have the last word. Number 3. The mutual aid that crossed every street. Beyond the formal organizations, families helped each other constantly. The meal sent to a sick neighbor, the work done free, the loan everyone knew would be repaid in kind. Your great-grandparents lived in a web of mutual aid that kept many families above water. Number 2. The faith and patience of the long view. The Depression lasted more than a decade, and your great-grandparents held on with a faith that better days would come and a patience that did not crack when they took a long time arriving. They did not give up. They kept working, saving, and looking forward, and that long view was as essential as any kitchen skill. Number 1. The dignity of doing for yourself. The thread that runs through every Depression survival skill is the deep pride of taking care of one's own. Your great-grandparents did not consider themselves victims. They considered themselves the ones who would make it through, and feeding, clothing, and sheltering the family on almost nothing was a constant act of dignity. They did not wait for rescue. They did the work, and the doing built character the family carried forward for generations. The forgetting came as prosperity returned in the post-war years, and the children of the Depression, given the chance to give their own children easier lives, chose comfort over the hard skills they had grown up with. The competence faded across a generation or two, and the tricks that had kept millions alive became the quaint stories of grandparents. But the knowledge is real, and any family that recovers a piece of it is wealthier for it. So here's your challenge. Pick one, just one. Cook the cheap cut of meat well this week. Stretch one ingredient further than usual. Mend something instead of replacing it. Tell me in the comments which one you'll try, and tell me what your grandparents lived through, because somebody in your family tree fed a household through the Depression using every trick on this list. That knowledge did not die. It just went quiet. It is time to start listening again.